All right, Mr. Chair, we're ready to go when you are.
All right, perfect. The time is 6:30. It's Wednesday, March 4th. I'll call this meeting to the Lakewood Planning Commission to order. Welcome, everybody. Please call the roll.
Robert Estrada. Here. Christian Flores.
Here.
Mark Air.
Here.
Lynn Larson is currently absent. Jim Merritt is excused this evening. Sharon Wallace. Here. You have quorum.
Thank you. Please stand. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move any further into the meeting, we'll just take a moment of silence for those around the world that are experiencing hard times in the war zone. All right. I trust you all had an opportunity to review the minutes that were sent to you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting from February 18th, 2026? It has been motioned and seconded that we approve the meeting minutes from February 18th, 2026. Is there any discussion? Seeing none and hearing none, we'll move on to the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from February 18th, 2026, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The motion is approved. Ms. Spear, are there any agenda updates?
No, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. We'll move on to public comment. Public comments or testimony on public hearings are accepted by mail, email, or by in-person or virtual attendance. You may mail comments to Karen Devereaux, Planning Commission Clerk, 6000 Main Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington, 98499, or email kdevereaux@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received by noon on the day of the meeting will be approved will be provided to the commission electronically. In-person and virtual comments will be heard. Each person has 3 minutes. Attendees are allowed to speak during public comment or public hearings only. Those attending in person will be called on by the chair. Those attending via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. Once the chair calls your name, you will be unmuted. First, state your name and city of residence, and then provide your testimony. Ms. Spear, is there anybody online?
There is not, Mr. Chair.
I see nobody present. Is there anybody in the hallway who would like to provide public comment today? No. All right, then I will declare this public comment period closed. We'll move on to the public hearing. Today we will have a public hearing on proposed changes to Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, related to rental housing licensing and inspection. Ms. Spear, is there anybody online for the public hearing?
There is not, but if you would allow, I'd like to just do a quick brief overview of what is the subject of the hearing tonight.
Outstanding.
So as you just mentioned, this is related to amendments to Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, which regulates how rental housing in the city of Lakewood receives its licensing and inspections through the city's rental housing safety program. There are 16 amendments in the proposals that you talked about at last week's meeting with Housing Program Manager Jeff Gum here to answer your questions. There's no changes to what you reviewed at the last time. But quickly, the intention here is basically to correct an unintended consequence of the way it's currently written that was exempting things from inspection and licensing when that was not the intent of the chapter. So this is really cleaning up what is subject to licensing and registration and the things that can be exempted from the inspection process. And it also removes accessory dwelling units, transitional housings, and shelters from the exemption. So they will always be inspected. And then there's also the reducing the number of years a property can be exempt, reducing that from 10 years down to 5. So with that, tonight is the public hearing and then potential action by commission. If council, or excuse me, if commission is ready to do that tonight, it will then move on to the city council for review starting March 16th. That's it, Mr. Chair. And then in terms of anyone online, there is no one online to testify.
Is there anybody in the building who would like to provide comments for the public hearing? Please indicate by moving towards the podium. All right, it's a big crowd out there tonight. Seeing none and hearing none, I will declare this public hearing closed. And we move on to
Well,
unfinished business.
yes, and so I'll just reopen what I was just sharing with you to give you language for a potential motion if the Planning Commission is ready to do it. It would be to approve Resolution 2026-03, which is included in your packet for tonight, recommending updates to the City Council regulations governing rental housing licensing and inspections.
Outstanding. Mr. Estrada? If you'd like to make a comment, we need to motion to bring it to discussion first.
Okay, make a motion that we open for discussion.
Outstanding. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion and seconded to approve the resolution 2026-03. It is now on the floor for discussion. Mr. Estrada.
Okay, I'll go that route. What I wanted to do was ask a question regarding, but since I was going to vote for approval of the motion anyway, we will assume this role here. Quick question, a quick comment, Ms. Spear, on the attachment. The last, the resolution, excuse me, the resolution,
Yes.
the last whereas.
The proposed amendments further the goals. Is that what you're referring to?
The attachment A that had the resolution, I believe. Sorry, I don't have it on the screen here.
Sure, I'll share it. 1 second. Bear with me, please.
Right there. You corrected it.
Okay,
There was already an error there, so it was on mine. I
okay,
see it's not there anymore, so, okay, thank you.
certainly.
Mr. Chair, I am going to vote in favor of this resolution. All my questions were answered adequately by Mr. Gum the last meeting. And, also I learned a heck of a lot about the city and its rental programs. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. As I mentioned to you, I have firsthand experience with his inspectors coming out, and from the very beginning, we saw how this program, we really needed this program. We've seen the pictures of how bad some of these units were, in fact, not being maintained by homeowners. But anyway, I thank you very much for listening to me.
Outstanding. Is there any other discussion? I'll just offer my comments briefly. I think this, as you pointed out, Mr. Estrada, this program was born out of necessity and has evolved and really put the city in a good position today that we were certainly not in at the beginning of the program. And these changes streamline some of that, and these administrative changes will be beneficial. And I think Mr. Gum has done a phenomenal job of really using a policy tool to bring about positive change for the entire community in terms of safety, wellness, health, all the way around. So I too will be voting to approve. One last opportunity. Is there any other discussion? All right. It has been motioned and seconded to approve the proposed changes to Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, related to rental housing licensing and inspection. And I don't have all that verbiage right in front of me still, Ms. Spear.
It's basically to approve Resolution 2026-3. That's sufficient.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. The motion is approved. And we move on to our next topic, tree canopy goal and tree preservation regulations. Ms. Spear.
Thank you. I'll open up once again. Give me just a moment, please. It's too bad that Mr. Larson's not here tonight because this was something that he was wanting to have the discussion about. So hopefully he'll be able to watch this after the fact. But what I'm going to do tonight is walk through some information that's been gathered over the last 4 or 5 years now by the city of Lakewood regarding the current state of the trees, if you will, in the city, but also coupling that with some requirements that we're now trying to follow and comply with from state law, as well as city council adopted goals that the Planning Commission has also had discussions about in recent years. And then just give a little bit of information about how the program is going to date. So in 2022, there was a new set of tree regulation protections that were adopted into our municipal code at Chapter 1870, Article 3. And that is the result of a work plan that had not only staff working on it with consultants, but they also convened what they called the Tree Advisory Committee. And they met, I believe, for about a year and ended up with some of the recommendations that were ultimately sent to council came from that advisory group. The following year, the city then also adopted a citywide tree canopy goal. And you'll see there the definition of what exactly tree canopy means. It's essentially the leaves, branches, and stems that are the tree coverage above the ground when you're looking down from the top. And that was the goal was set at 40% citywide by the year 2050. This is a note that some of you were here, but others maybe have heard from those who were here. The Planning Commission actually recommended a canopy goal of 30%. And then when the council took the matter up, they went ahead and made a change and adopted a 40% canopy goal in its ordinance 775. As we sit here tonight, the city planning document, the big one, the comprehensive plan, has a couple of different goals referring to trees or urban forestry in some way. So in our energy and climate change chapter, there is a clear statement to enhancing quality and sustainability of the urban forest and urban tree canopy for the reasons of mitigating heat island effects, stormwater drainage concerns, and then also environmental quality. And then there's a more complicated or lengthy goal laid out in the natural environment element that refers specifically to an urban forestry program, talking about funding one, standing one up, and then maintaining it over time. Looking at street trees for planting and maintenance, retaining significant trees and tree stands, and retention of such. Looking at a tree fund, continuing that to preserve wooded areas, restore and enhance native trees, and provide for education and research. And then here is where you see the tree canopy goal that was adopted by City Council of 40% citywide. And then looking at opportunities for equity when evaluating the tree canopy distribution across the city. So as the city has now taken those goals that were adopted, staff in the Planning and Public Works, as well as the Parks and Recreation and Community Services departments, have been trying to gather some data that now will assist implementing those goals that were just mentioned from our comprehensive plan. So there was a tree canopy analysis done all electronically, basically through LiDAR in 2022 that accompanied the adoption of that new regulatory code. We also, as a city, adopted an energy and climate change work plan, which was based on a lot of work that examined what type of effects of climate change the city of Lakewood could anticipate. So drier years, hotter years, more really hot days, potential for flooding when there was flooding to happen, and other things, air quality over time as well. There, in the following year, was a partnership with the UW Evans School. They have a School of Public Governance and Policy. Their students provided for us as their master's capstone project a document called Establishing the Roots of Urban Forestry, an implementation guide. And it was an opportunity for the city to take advantage of those kids. I'll call them kids, but they were master students, who went out into the community and asked questions. First of all, what do you know about how climate maybe has been affecting you lately? Have you been experiencing things as a property owner, as a resident, as someone who commutes through Lakewood? Have you experienced changes in the weather or changes in your quality of life? And then also, as a result of all of that outreach that they did, they provided the city recommendations on how to be effective in our public outreach regarding these topics, as well as others. There was some great advice in there. Next year, we did an update to the natural environment and climate change elements in our comprehensive plan. There was significant research done through consultants and again, public outreach. And then in 2024, 3 different things happened. There was an updated urban forest assessment report. There was also actual people driving around in the city of Lakewood on some of the hottest days to track where in the city were the hottest temperatures. And out of that, probably not a surprise to anyone, the areas with less trees had higher temperatures. And then the Pierce County actually did an analysis report as a result of that. So we have access to that information related to Lakewood as well. So I'm going to start to go into a little more detail about the 2024 Lakewood Tree Assessment Report. Excuse me, 1 second. Can I have 5 minutes? 5-minute recess?
Please, do we need a vote for that? We just adjourn for 5 minutes?
If you could do that and come
Yep,
back.
we'll
in
just
5
take a
minutes.
5-minute recess.
Thank you, sir. That ready to continue if you're ready.
No
to
worries, please continue.
Pull it back together. Thank you. So allow me to now share the correct document. My apologies. So we went through the different sources of data that were collected after the policies and regulations were adopted since 2022. What we now currently have within our city code are actually three different areas that address trees in some way. There's the Tree Preservation Code at, again, Title 18A, Chapter 70.300, talking about regulating how to maintain or remove trees, providing incentives to preserve trees. We have also our critical areas ordinance, which protects critical areas, including priority white oak or Gary oak woodlands. Woodlands is there defined at the bottom of the screen. And then we also have within the city's shoreline master program, protection of trees within shoreline areas that are governed by that chapter. So the larger lakes in the city, for instance, actually are subject to the city's shoreline master program. So we're going to go back first to the 2022 tree assessment information, just for some background. And as part of that process that went through the Tree Advisory Committee, there was this analysis made of the type of land cover that the city had. Top right, you'll see a number of different colors indicated on the pie chart. The highest percentage there is the impervious surface, and then you see herbaceous grass, tree canopy, water, shrubs, and soil or bare earth. So as a city to have that much impervious surface and then the rest being non-impervious is actually pretty good. And then when you look down at the bottom under the tree canopy assessment, what that assessment found was that the citywide coverage for trees was at about 26%. 72% was on privately owned property and 28% was on public land. And out of the private land, 28% of it had urban tree canopy and 22% of the public land had urban tree canopy. So if you think about that, there's going to be bare spaces, whether it's in a park open space or somebody's backyard, that sort of thing. The other thing that the 2022 assessment showed was through land uses within where there are uses happening, again, top right, residential is about 59% of the land use across the city. And then you'll see a number of other colors. The second largest is actually open space and recreation at about 17%. Multifamily, meaning 5 or more units, so apartments essentially, about 6% of the city. 5% public institutional. So that could be colleges or public schools. It could be government-owned property, the colleges, et cetera. Air corridor, that is over on the far east side of the city where there's a limited amount of land uses because of safety issues with North McCord Airfield. And then we had the commercial and industrial analyzed, the public right-of-way, and water and open space. Bottom left here, you'll see comparison of, as of 2022 at least, the tree coverage in Lakewood versus some other jurisdictions. Lakewood, again, at about 26% under this analysis. You see Tacoma is at 20%, and then others are above that or below that. Then began a goal-setting process through the Tree Advisory Committee. And so there was a look at the, quote, tree equity scores. The American Forest Association, I believe is the organization, does this map. And it talks about the quality of and health of the trees, the amount of the trees per acre, and essentially you end up with a color-coded map. Green, not surprisingly, has more trees. The orange has less. And so what was found at the time was that where you see the brighter orange, that is where poorer, lower economic income folks are in the city. 20 to 40% of the people of color in the area where there was the most trees, but you see a higher percentage there in the lower income brackets. The other thing that came out of the Tree Advisory Committee was a goal to actually get all of the census groups or census tracts within the city of Lakewood to an equity score of 75. So right now, or at 2022, I should have said, the percentage was lower than that. You'll see there was actually 17 out of all of the census tracts were below 63. Then you had a 64 to 79 score, 80 to 89 and on up. And so the idea was to bring all of these that were below 63 and those between 64 and 75 add the trees in those parts of the city. So everybody had a tree equity score of at least 75. The analysis at that point was about 60,000 trees would be needed to get the block groups to a score of 75. The Tree Advisory Committee then looked at a couple of other areas, including the canopy cover and where in the city it was less than 25%, results of surface temperature differences, where the people of color in the city were living, and then also areas where there was a possibility of at least 50% of a parcel could be used for planting of trees. So they combined all of those different maps and ended up with some prioritized areas of where they recommended tree planting should be focused. And so I'll go over this a couple more times on a couple of future slides, but basically this is open space parkland to the northeast. This is part of Springbrook and then over I-5 up into a little bit of what's now our Station District subarea. This area here is part of Lakeview, one of the lower economic areas of the city. Down here is Woodbrook, another isolated area because it's across from I-5, but it's also a poorer area of the city. This is Pierce College, but also residential neighborhoods around it, and then more residential areas off to the southeast from Pierce College. And then this kind of parallelogram is in between Lake Steilacoom and Fort Steilacoom Park. So if you were to take that same map there of where they prioritized the plantings to happen first and try to compare that to the zoning, again, we're talking about open space land, which is owned either by the city of Lakewood or perhaps some of it owned by Pierce County. And then you'll have residential areas, the yellow, so that's going to be private property owners. The dark blue is a public institution, Pierce College again. Down in Woodbrook, the gray is industrial area actually, so it would be a matter of working with the property owners there to see if they're able to add some additional tree cover, particularly in their parking areas as a great opportunity. And then up in Springbrook, again, an industrial spot there. When you look at the area in Lakeview, that is a multifamily area, so higher density, but maybe some potential there to add some additional trees. That is actually an area where right now we have quite a bit of development happening with the Kendrick Apartments that are being built. And again, the area between Lake Steilacoom and Fort Steilacoom Park, residential areas, so it would be dealing with private property owners and offering them opportunities, hopefully, to add trees to their property. If you look one more time at that same area that was prioritized by the Tree Advisory Committee, this is a comparison. The larger map shows you where all of the residential zones that were at the time single family only, they are now different, as you know, from state law changes where we no longer have really single family only areas. It's you have at least an ADU, you could have multiple houses on a lot. But these areas of the city, when you compare that again to where some of these priority areas are, it is going to be a matter of talking to and encouraging private property owners as well as public to add trees to their property in order to achieve the tree canopy goal. So that was all in 2022. Then we had our 2024 tree assessment report, which was done in a more in-depth way. There were 3 different ways that trees were analyzed in the city. There was actually a physical walking around by, I think, 4 or 5 individuals who looked at, touched almost 12,000 trees that were located within the public rights of way, in city parks, on public school property, and other public institutional grounds like Western State Hospital or St. Clair Hospital. And the analysis is not just are they there and what is their size, but it actually included an analysis of their health and if they needed some maintenance or if they were getting toward the end of their healthy life. Then there was an electronic analysis called FLAT for large acre natural areas where maybe it didn't make sense or was very difficult to physically walk through. So Fort Steilacoom Park, Seeley Lake Park, Wards Lake Park, and then the South Puget Sound Wildlife Area were all done through that FLAT analysis. And then the third part that was done in our 24 report was again using LIDAR, again an electronic analysis from above, looking at privately owned large acreage properties. and then tracking and identifying which census tracts in the city had less than a 35% tree canopy. So this is just a comparison of the places in the city where each one of those techniques was used. This first map on the left is where people were actually out walking the property, looking at the trees physically. And so as you can see, it tracks really the public rights of way, the roads. It was in the parks, and it was in some of the areas where large school properties, like over here, Pierce College and Clover Park as well. The flat assessment, Fort Steilacoom, South Puget Sound Wildlife, Sealy Lake Park, and Wards Lake. And then LiDAR was used again for those private large acreage areas, Tacoma Golf and Country Club, Meadow Park Golf Course, Oak Brook, Western State Hospital. And then the final map to the right is that analysis conclusion of where in the city, which areas had a tree canopy of lower than 35%. And if we look at that on a larger map, you'll see here it kind of makes sense color-wise. The darker blue means there's more tree canopy cover. The lighter colors means there's less. Probably not a surprise along the I-5 corridor up into South Tacoma Way and Pacific Avenue. That's going to be between 0 and 10%. You've got the limitations because, again, of flight paths. Historically, trees are limited so they don't affect flight path and the ability for people to take off and land North McCord. And then the darker blue is around the lakes. It's in areas that have historically been owned by or maintained at higher property values. You do have down in Woodbrook, Tillicum, and Springbrook, those areas south of I-5 and then just to the north of it on the south end of the city, kind of a mixed bag where you have some areas that are between 10 and 20, and actually on the edge of Tillicum at the top, and then at the far east end of Woodbrook, you've got some higher percentages there. This report, which is more refined and more on-the-ground real information, was found that there was a 24.4% canopy cover, which means there would need to be an increase of 15.6% to hit that 40% goal by 2050. The canopy coverage showed that most of the city's available land for planting trees was in the residential areas. Open space and recreation had the next largest category, and then commercial and industrial, again, because of the land use there. As you can imagine, there was less trees there and less space for trees to be planted. So getting into that a little bit more. The report actually talked about, quote, plantable areas. And this was an idea to say, these are areas in the city as you conduct future planning for where you want to prioritize in your urban forestry program, for instance, where the consultants at the time felt were the places to look to first. So this is not the same analysis that what happened in 22 with that tree advisory committee who looked at all of those other criteria and said, these are the places to prioritize. This one was where, just by looking at the land now, how it's being used, does it have pavement on it or not? What kind of coverage is there already? Where do we have, quote, plantable areas? And there was about 31% of the city identified as plantable. So if you were to say, okay, we're not going to look even at the rest of the city, we're just going to look at those, quote, plantable areas. Half of all of the identified areas would have had to be 100% tree canopy to hit the 40% goal. That's probably not a realistic thing to try to do. So the question then becomes, okay, how do we take this information about what's plantable and what's not and roll it in to considerations with what our land use planning is for different parts of the city? The areas that had the highest amount of plantable area identified, again, I don't think this will be a surprise, but is the residential areas, zones residential 2, 3, and 4, and then the open space and recreation zones 1 and 2. So all of these zones in the city had at least 5% of their area, or 5% of the plantable area for the city overall. Looking at that plantable area and trying to understand, well, what is the caution there with using the number that's recommended? Because again, it didn't take into consideration things like in the right of way, we still are going to be building more roads. We're going to be expanding roads. We're going to be adding sidewalks. And that's going to take away area where trees aren't right now, but they won't go likely in the future because there's going to be a road or a sidewalk, right? And then for the parks that were identified or the open space area that was identified, that's not going to become 100% covered with trees because it's a park intended for sports fields or for other open space activities. And on the school grounds, there's going to be, again, that idea of using open space for something other than having tree stands. So the areas that were, quote, plantable were identified, and there are sources of information for the city, but it's not suggested that A is 100% accurate because it didn't have all of the information about how the land is going to be used going forward. And B, if you were to only look at the plantable areas, that leaves a lot of the other parts of the city without any increase in tree canopy. Down here at the bottom, you'll see again, parks and residential areas is where there is the most plantable area identified. The schools, St. Clair and Western State Hospital had about 7%. Lake Wold Garden, Oak Brook Golf Course, and then Tacoma Country and Golf Club had almost 6% identified there. And then commercial and industrial areas across the city, the lowest percentages. So, looking at the residential areas, which is where supposedly there's the highest percentages for adding trees. This is where the idea where sometimes you'll hear me or others say, there's kind of this, what's going to trump what in policies for land use? Are we going to do just housing density and housing growth? Or are we going to talk about tree preservation? And how do you do that on the same acreage of property, right? So we're looking at areas in the city identified for at least 2 units per acre, at least 2 units per lot, up to 6 or more per lot in the R4 zone. And then you're also looking at all of these different types of uses that could happen on any of those parcels now across the city. And the dance that's going to have to happen over time is, okay, if we're going to put a duplex up to a 5-plex on what used to have a single-family home, how are we also going to increase tree canopy coverage on that parcel? Is it possible to do? And if so, is it what's the cleverest, most efficient way to do it to have it succeed over time? So that's the kind of discussion that we'll need to start to have within the city between now and 2050 for this goal to happen. So kind of what I already just said, but how are we going to be meeting the city's housing and job targets when we're also trying to increase the tree canopy? Not only because of the goal that the city council adopted, but because of the newer rules in state law now about climate change planning. And then how are our open space and recreation lands, the parcels that are identified as parks or as just passive open space, does it make sense to try to increase tree canopy there given the other uses that are on those lands? And that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. Again, I'm sure if Mr. Larson was here tonight, he would have had some comments to bring forward. But if there's anything, Mr. Chair, that you guys would like to discuss, more than happy to try to answer anything.
Go ahead.
Well, for the future, once we have this discussion, I believe the solution for me is very simple. It will be allowing and incentivizing builders to go 2, 3 stories, 4 stories, instead of using more land. That will, look, contractors and builders and investors are very creative. Just tell them what you want and they will figure it out. As a contractor, as an investor, I can keep the same trees on the same lot where a house was, and I can build a 6-plex without touching the trees, as long as the city will give me the permits and will help me on getting all this documentation in order, instead of having I'm gonna just throw somebody under the bus, instead of having the permit department hammering me down on my plans or my goal in this building,
Yep.
for example. That's one way to do it.
Mr. Estrada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One comment, first of all, you mentioned the areas that have less number of trees. Of course, that means those are the hotter areas. That also means, and it also is where our lower income folks are living, which means that they pay more for utilities. So just a consequence of
Mhm.
not having
Hmm.
trees or of having so many apartments. There is. But I have a question, Ms. Spear, and one of our charts. This presentation, by the way, it seems a little bit different than what I saw on what you provided.
It is different, and so I will get you the updated version, yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, I noticed that in one of the charts we had, it said that residential two had 576 acres, 250 of them already had canopy. So we had about 178 acres that were plantable. My question is, why wasn't residential one included? They have 441 acres, 212 canopy, 131 plantable.
Please don't get dizzy. I'm going to scroll again. Sorry. Oops. And then it went away. Okay. I apologize. I will slow down and I will get us to where there's information to respond to your question. So this is the full table showing plantable area and land area. And so residential one, as you say, Commissioner, is 441 acres total with 212 covered in tree canopy. Plantable area, so what's left is 131 or so acres, or about 30% of residential one, and that constitutes 3.8% of the total plantable area in the city. That previous slide where I was just summarizing was to show the areas that were 5% or more. So that was a purely arbitrary thing on my part to pull out the areas where the highest percentages were identified as future plantable areas. So if you were to look here, you'd see the same information. It's just, I just summarized those higher percentage plantable areas.
Not that it's not usable, it's just with your data, you indicated 5% and up.
Yeah, I just pulled from this chart here.
Okay.
And so it was residential 2, 3, and 4, and then open space and recreation 1 and 2 that were all at least 5% of the total citywide plantable area. So for instance, you can see here down at the very bottom, right of way is only half of 1% of the area where plantable space was identified. The industrial business park, 2.5% of the total citywide. So it's there, but I just pulled the higher percentages out.
Okay.
And then you mentioned as well, Commissioner, the maps and things that the tree advisory committee looked at. Again, forgive me, I'm going to scroll quickly. Okay, so this goes back to the 2022 analysis. This is the overall tree assessment urban tree canopy from 2022. And the map looks very similar to the one from 2024, but it's at a higher, less specific level, and it was all done electronically rather than with anything happening on the ground. This is the tree equity score I mentioned, where it's, how many trees per acre coupled with a couple of other criteria that's through American Forests. And generally speaking, the south and the eastern parts of the city are where you have a lower tree score. This is purely the tree canopy cover by percentage that is below 25%. So the higher or lighter the color, the lower number of trees per acre you would have. These are the surface area temperatures. And so I'm going to try to toggle back and forth and make a point. Here you see the darker colors are the better, if you will. It's got more trees. If you then go to your surface area, the darker colors is where it's hotter. And so the higher, lighter colors here equal darker colors in terms of heat. That's just a really high level general comparison between those two charts. And then you look at the people of color, again, darker color is a higher percentage. So fewer trees, higher temperatures, more people of color. And then what you ended up was, okay, now that we look at where in the city is there at least 50% of parcels open for additional planting of trees. The darker colors equals there's more opportunity to plant on the trees, on the parcel, more trees. Lighter colors, there's less opportunity, but again, it's over 50%. Oops. And so that final little map that showed just those areas that were prioritized by the Tree Advisory Committee. This one. This is the composite then of putting all of those different things together, all of the things that they looked at in the advisory group. And so these areas, if you'll recall, this is where there was higher temperatures, there were fewer trees, and there was also this 50% or higher tree plantable area that they had in 2022. So that's where this map came from.
I have two more questions, but I don't want to, somebody else has a question first.
I have a few, but go ahead.
Okay, another question. The area South Puget Sound, something, where the hatchery is at,
The South Puget Sound Wildlife Area,
wildlife area, who owns that?
the state owns it, I believe. They administer it for sure. It's kind of surrounded by Oak Brook, really generally speaking, but it's a wildlife area where they just did some planting with Northwest Youth Corps. And so there's opportunity maybe to actually do some additional planting there, but it is not open for development. It is a wildlife corridor for wildlife to move through the city.
So if we planted trees galore there in that area, that fit some of our percentage requirement.
Mhm.
But it doesn't belong to us, though.
It's not city owned, but we certainly, as a city, hope with our urban forestry program to be making partnerships with the state, with the county that may own property within our area, within the city boundaries, and then also private property owners are obviously going to have to be willing to engage in order to successfully hit that number. Even if it's 30%, let alone the 40, it's going to take more than just stuff happening on city-owned property.
And one more question. The Alliance construction here, were they required to plant trees and to have a park or whatever within the confines?
Both. There will be a park for the occupants of those housing units that are being built now. And they also have, I can't remember the exact ratio, but it is a significantly higher number of trees that will be planted than were taken down. So by the time it's done, there will be a higher tree canopy cover than there was before.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Estrada. Anybody else have any questions?
I had a question. Are we looking a little bit at could you help me with what kind of incentives are there for different people to use their parcels? And also, are there certain types of tree combinations that are going to be suggested by the city so that we end up with the right mix of trees that are desired?
Yeah, one of the things that's happening under state law is we are required to create a native and climate resilient list of species, both for city projects, but also for the public to access. And we're working now already with Pierce Conservation District, Tacoma Tree Foundation, and the Tacoma Bird Alliance to develop kind of a little outreach sheet that says, hey, these are the types of species that work well together, that also work well with our climate as it changes. And hopefully, this is how you would plant them and maintain them.
Then I had one other question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The issue of water is important. And has the city come up on any thoughts of how to do that? Because these trees, as they get bigger, use a lot of water and it gets expensive. So what are your thoughts, or what are the city's thoughts?
We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
We'll have to be working with the the Lakewood Water District in order to bring them up to speed on the type of planning that we're now needing to do for tree canopy as well as jobs and people.
Okay.
And it will be because the city does not own the utility, it will be a matter of having them take this into account in their planning going forward, for not only what happens within the city itself, but also the water that they wheel to other areas.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other member have any questions? Okay, Ms. Spear, I have a couple questions. You'd mentioned that this body recommended to the city council for a 30% tree canopy coverage, and the council elected to implement a 40% standard. Is that goal realistic, and is it similarly aligned with other municipalities in our region, or is it above or below?
It is above what, sorry, how to say it. I believe the city of Tacoma, for instance, that is currently at 20%, they are increasing their canopy, but they're not going up to 40%. And I think their number is in flux right now. They're trying to figure out how and what they can realistically achieve. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some jurisdictions to the north in King County that are already over 40%. But every jurisdiction is unique in terms of its age and its size and its development patterns, how things have been built out to date, which affect what trees are still standing or have been planted. So I think for us, we are a jurisdiction with, again, the effect of the base being immediately next door. We have a number of large lakes, and then we have the two colleges, the Western State Hospital, as well as St. Clair. So there's things that are large acreage for a reason that may or may not make sense to have a lot of trees on those properties. And so we're going to have to take all of that into account over time to see if 40% is reachable. And again, that weighing of land being used for climate resiliency work and how that can be reconciled with the amount of density we're supposed to be planning for as a city. Because we are supposed to be one of those areas that grows more than the unincorporated part of the county. Whether we're going to hit 40% or not by 2050, I don't know. But it's a significant increase. 15% plus is a significant increase.
Having lofty goals is good, right? It is good to want to move forward. The important thing about having goals is incrementally moving towards your goals. With that in mind, my next question is, I think based on the slides that were presented here tonight and what I've seen before, from the 2020 to the 2050 goal, there was a delta of about 16,000 trees is projected to be able to meet that requirement. On back of the napkin math tells me that's about 533 trees per year that we need to plant to reach that goal by 2050. And if you move forward from 2020 to 20 now, we've completed 5 years. We should have planted just under 2,700 trees. Is that a reality? Have we planted 2,700 trees, or do we even know? Or where are we at in that arc?
We do not know that. I would doubt that it's anywhere near that number. And the way that the city is incentivizing incentivizing development to retain trees on site is things like additional height, as Commissioner Flores has mentioned, also reducing parking, reducing some of the other fees. There's the opportunity as well to pay a fee in lieu, meaning if you aren't able to keep a tree on site, but you would put dollars toward the city planting a number of trees in a different place, in a more concentrated stand. But it is up to the private property owner ultimately at this point to either retain or plant additional trees beyond what might be absolutely required if they try to pull a permit from the city. Whether we can get the momentum to get that kind of number planted every year, again, it's going to be up to people changing probably the way they think right now about what they want to do with their property.
Certainly, I don't disagree with that. I don't remember the exact breakdown on city-owned property versus publicly owned property, but the city certainly has a sizable portion of that. It seems like we might be coming up a little short if we have stated goals to achieve, but we do not have realistic tracking metrics in place. I mean, I applied for a city business license today, and there were plenty of questions in there about all kinds of things, including parking, and how many trips might be initiated out of my office. If we're going to track it, we're going to spend money on it, we need to actually track it, right?
Absolutely. And that's part of the development of the urban forestry program.
One other question I had, in the LiDAR map, there was a slide with multiple methods of assessment.
Uh-huh.
It appeared that we included Meadow Park Golf Course and Camp Murray, at least in that one slide. And those properties are outside of the bounds of Lakewood. Were they incorporated in the math and the calculation, or was that just that one method of assessment?
They were, are you referring to what you see
Yeah,
here, for instance?
correct.
The LiDAR is done through census tracts, which don't match city boundaries. And so you'll see the Camp Murray and then the Meadow Park. They were included just the parts that were within city for this one map, but it wasn't calculated within the totals.
Perfect. And then I had one other question with regards to calculating area. And I know Mr. Larson was here. He would appreciate this question. Do we exclude the square footage or acreage area that is water out of our land calculation for coverage available area?
Meaning subtract
Right, yeah,
Gravity
do we
Lake
take
and-
out the water
yeah.
covered area out of our land mass?
Yes,
We did,
yes.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I may comment.
please go ahead.
Piggyback on what you just said. I think in the slides, it showed that the city of Lakewood had 19 square acres. That don't seem like a heck of a lot. That's not right.
Of water,
No, total land,
19,000,
1,000.
yeah.
And 17,000 of that is land, and 1,000 of that is water. So that's how that comes out. So the water was not included into.
Right. Right.
And for one more question, if I may add. Incentivizing property owners to not to cut down, or if they're going to cut to replant. That's only applicable to those who have property over 10,000 square feet. And how many properties are less than 10,000 that in fact have trees that we actually don't have no control over?
Yeah, and to just try to bring that home for people. One more time. Oh, dang it, sorry. Close your eyes, I'll tell you when to look. Sorry. I have it in here, I know. Okay, so there is a map here showing you all of the residential areas. Most of what you see here, the dark purple in particular, and then the orange, they are going to be below 10,000 square feet, meaning they are exempt from the requirements to retain trees or plant trees at a certain percentage if you take something down. It is the larger parcels above 10,000 square feet that are currently regulated by our city's code. So what Commissioner Estrada was just mentioning is it's a matter of trying to appeal to the goodwill and the logic of those that own these parcels that are less than 10,000 square feet, because right now there is no regulation in place. They were exempted when the program was adopted a few years ago from retaining trees on site. And so whether those regulations are going to change at some point, I couldn't tell you. As part of the urban forestry program development, for instance, maybe the council would take that up. But otherwise, it is trying to make people aware of the situation, invite them to hopefully access low or no cost trees that the city could help them get. For instance, we do have a couple of tree sales that we're planning for this year and urban tree giveaways that we hope will start this process over time. But they on those two colors in particular, the purple and the dark orange here, are likely not subject to those tree regulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Spear, I have one more
Sure.
question, and this comes back to counting and tracking and metrics. We are, correct me if I'm wrong, we issue permits or we control tree removal, right? Because we permit for that.
Mhm.
And we offer the ability to pay into the tree fund, right, if that's not the desired route. understanding it might be a big ask to track every single tree because we can't control every single tree. But what we can control is how many permits we've issued, how many in lieu of payments we've received. It seems like this information is out there somewhere and we maybe just haven't looked in the right place for it. It would be good to at least see some type of a tracking. That may help the private push as well. If it's like, hey, we're 80% of the way there with city activity. If private landowners can step up here, we can really close this gap. I think in the storytelling, that might go a long way.
Agreed. And we hope to have something up on our website in the not too distant future.
Perfect. And I had one more thing and it is escaping me at the moment. So I guess, does any other council member or commission member have any comments?
I just had a question. And so what are we thinking of to try to encourage residents, both larger landowners and smaller, to plant trees? Or do we have some kind of a thought process? Because not everyone can do the same things, but I think if we had incentives there are a lot of people, maybe they only put one in their yard, or maybe they leave one in, or maybe somebody else puts in 50, but everybody would count. And so do we have a thought process of how we're going to address that?
It's going to come through the urban forestry program and the advisory process that at this point, the city council is deciding whether it's going to be a new stood up advisory board to them. Or actually, they're talking about whether the planning commission would pick that up as part of what it does. The next time they're going to cover that topic is actually next Monday night, where they're going to give staff further direction as to whether they want a new advisory board that would take its recommendations to you and then up to council, or if the conversation would be held here and then up to council. We're going to see where they want it to go. But the idea is there will be yes, recommendations on how to get people interested and engaged and what can be done to make it as easy as possible for whether it's a commercial or a residential property owner to access trees and get it going.
Thank you.
Ms. Spear, my question dawned on me while I was waiting.
Okay.
With regard to the tree fund, what are the authorized uses of and spend of those monies out of that fund?
It is listed specifically in code. It includes maintaining trees that are in place now, whether it's maintenance or restoration or replanting of areas where trees have been taken down over time. It is the funding for the education programs that we're talking about. It is the M&O, if you will, of the urban forestry program once it's running. And then if the city council were to find something else that's somehow related to trees that they wanted to add as another one, but there's a specific list in code.
Okay. I have no other questions. Nothing?
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, we move on to next steps.
Looks like Councilmember Chabot was unable to join us tonight, but in terms of next steps, I just mentioned it, but next Monday night, they will be talking about the role of what's being called at this point, the Natural Environment and Climate Change Advisory Board, and how that will continue to come to fruition. Your next meeting will be March 18th, and we'll be jumping to a couple of different topics. We're going to have some information in front of you regarding the Shoreline Master Program. There's an amendment that's being proposed in order to incorporate a parcel into Edgewater Park. There will be some conversation about the city's ADA transition plan, American with Disabilities Act transition plan for sidewalks and other areas of the city will be in front of you. And I believe there's one other topic that escapes me. And then as we get into April, we'll be starting the process of our 2026 Comprehensive Plan Amendment Package.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, if you're watching on Zoom or YouTube, have a great week. I'll remind you all that time changes this coming weekend and the longer days are coming. Council Commissioner Estrada.
I want to welcome our new commissioner.
Oh, yes.
Cook, please. And work hard. Thank you.
Yes, apologies. Thank you for joining the team. We missed you last week, and I was all mentally prepared at our last meeting to do that, but welcome. It's wonderful to have you joining us on the dais, and we look forward to many discussions in the future. All right, with that being said, the time